This is a story of justice and betrayal, a tale of a judge who found herself on the wrong side of the law she was sworn to uphold. It was an ordinary Thursday morning in Caldwell, Arizona, until it wasn't. The rising sun, a fiery orb, kissed the federal courthouse with gold as Judge Alara Sterling parked her blue sedan at precisely 8:37 a.m. At 52, she moved with an air of quiet authority, her navy blouse crisp, her black trousers pressed, and her worn leather briefcase heavy with the weight of 3 pivotal cases scheduled for that day. She stepped onto the sidewalk, inhaling the cool air, and offered a warm smile to the familiar guards. For 2 decades, she had walked these steps, but today would etch itself into history. "Hold it right there," a voice barked, sharp as a shard of glass. Alara turned slowly to see Officer Mason Vance striding toward her, broad-shouldered with a buzz cut and pale eyes that glimmered with arrogance and something far uglier. She had heard whispers of his reputation, and now she understood why. "Excuse me, officer. Can I help you?" she asked politely. "You don't belong here. This is restricted." He sneered, his words dripping with prejudice. "Actually, I save it," he snapped, seizing her arm with bruising force. "You're attempting to enter a federal building illegally. Serious crime." 3 more officers appeared: Reynolds, Carter, and Collins. Reynolds smirked and began filming on his phone. Carter looked unsure. Collins looked uncomfortable, but none intervened. Surveillance cameras recorded everything. "Release me at once," Alara said, her voice steady despite the sting of humiliation. "Shut up, you ghetto thug," Vance spat, slamming her against the brick wall. Her briefcase hit the ground, papers scattering across the pavement. Handcuffs clicked tight around her wrists, the steel biting into her skin. Passers-by gasped and filmed. Still, Alara kept her head high, her brown eyes burning with a controlled fury. "I want to speak with my lawyer immediately," she demanded. "You'll speak to the judge," Vance growled, dragging her toward the courthouse door she knew so well. Inside courtroom number 7, interim Judge Arthur Miller adjusted his glasses, preparing for the docket. He had been called in unexpectedly, told nothing of why Judge Sterling was absent. The room buzzed with usual anticipation when Vance stormed in, parading his prisoner. "Your Honor," he declared, shoving Alara toward the defendant's bench. "We caught this woman attempting to infiltrate the courthouse with falsified documents. Extremely suspicious behavior." Prosecutor Jane Holloway rose instantly, nodding in agreement. "This is clearly an intrusion and a breach of order, possibly falsification of government records." Alara stayed silent, watching every face: the nervous clerk, the uneasy guards, the spectators craning their necks. She knew this room better than anyone. Timing was everything. "The accused may rise," Judge Miller said hesitantly. Alara stood, the cuffs gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Her composure was regal, her tone steady. "Your Honor, I request permission to speak before any formal charges are entered." Something in her bearing made Miller pause. He nodded. "First," Alara began, her eyes locked on Vance. "All actions taken by Officer Vance were illegal based on unfounded assumptions." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. "Second," she continued, "as established in Tennessee v. Garner, 1985, and Graham v. Connor, 1989, the use of force by law enforcement must be reasonable and necessary. Nothing I did justified physical aggression." The silence deepened. Even Holloway froze mid-note, her pen suspended. "Third, I demand preservation of all surveillance footage and officer body cam data under the federal rules of evidence. These recordings are critical to my defense." Sweat rolled down Vance's temple. His bravado faltered. And finally, Alara said, her words deliberate, her eyes sweeping the room, "I am Judge Alara Olivia Sterling, presiding federal judge of this courthouse for the last 7 months and 15 days. The courtroom erupted. Gasps filled the air and whispers darted between spectators like wildfire. Judge Miller sat stunned, his gavel frozen midair. Prosecutor Holloway's face blanched as realization struck. Collins, the only officer who had looked uneasy, now stared at the floor, visibly shaken. Carter's mouth fell open, unsure whether to salute or flee. Reynolds hastily lowered his phone, his smirk wiped clean, and Vance, suddenly pale, stared at Alara as if she were a phantom who had stepped out of the walls themselves. His arrogance cracked, leaving only panic. But Alara wasn't finished. She straightened her shoulders and prepared to speak again. Every person in the room leaned forward, breath caught, waiting for what would come next. What she was about to reveal would shatter the courtroom's fragile silence. And nothing, neither the officers, the prosecutor, nor even Judge Miller, would leave that chamber unchanged as a collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Judge Miller paled. Prosecutor Holloway dropped her pen, and Officer Mason Vance looked ready to faint. When the session resumed, after a tense, 45-minute recess, every corner of the chamber was filled. Journalists, residents, law students, all eager to witness what was already being called Caldwell's trial of the decade. Judge Alara Sterling entered in her black robe, wielding the mahogany gavel she had received at her appointment. Seated on the bench, her presence radiated authority. "This court is in session," she declared. "The defendant, Mason Vance, will remain standing." Vance's legs trembled beside his anxious young attorney, David Martinez. Both understood the gravity of facing one of the nation's most respected judges. "Material evidence will now be presented," Alara announced as surveillance footage appeared on a large screen. In high definition, the courtroom saw Vance unjustifiably assaulting Alara earlier that morning, ignoring her explanations, hurling racist insults, and using unnecessary force. The audio captured every word with chilling clarity. Next, the body camera recordings from Officers Reynolds and Carter, Alara continued. The audience heard mocking laughter, racist remarks, and fabricated details designed to cover Vance's actions. "Officer Reynolds," Alara's voice turned icy. "You claimed I was screaming and threatening. The video proves otherwise." Reynolds stammered. "I may have misinterpreted." "You lied under oath," she cut in, as did Officer Carter. "Both of you committed perjury." Then came the revelation that left the courtroom breathless. "For 6 months," Alara announced, "I have secretly collaborated with the FBI on an investigation into systemic abuse and racial discrimination in this jurisdiction." Officer Mason Vance was a primary subject. The room erupted in murmurs. Vance's face turned a sickly green. Alara projected statistical data. 87% of Vance's arrests targeted Black or Latino residents, though they made up only 35% of the population. Charts showed 39% of his cases were dismissed for illegal procedure, while the county had paid $2 million in misconduct settlements tied solely to him. Rising solemnly, Alara prepared to deliver judgment. Silence fell so absolute that even the air conditioning hummed like thunder. "Mason Vance," her voice resonated. "This court finds you guilty of assaulting a federal officer, systematic civil rights violations under the Civil Rights Act of 1968, and aggravated perjury. Your sentence is 25 years in federal prison without parole." She struck her gavel with a thunderous finality. Vance collapsed, shaking. His lawyer touched his shoulder helplessly. "But the consequences extend further," Alara declared, turning to the public. She ordered a full federal review of every case Vance had handled over 7 years. Officers Reynolds and Carter were dismissed on the spot and referred for trial. She mandated sweeping police reforms, mandatory civil rights training, constant use of body cameras, and an independent civilian oversight board. In the days that followed, the impact was extraordinary. The video of the trial spread nationwide, reaching millions online. Morning shows dissected every moment while universities invited Alara to lecture on civil rights. The FBI quickly arrested 4 supervisors who had covered up Vance's abuses. Dozens of wrongfully convicted individuals were released after federal review points. 6 months later, the courthouse itself was renamed the Alara Sterling Federal Courthouse. At the dedication, a bronze plaque immortalized the date justice had found its voice. The verdict video surpassed 50 million views within 3 weeks. In schools, students studied Alara's words in civics classes. In law programs, her judgment became required reading. Her most famous line became a national symbol, quoted on T-shirts and in political speeches. "My place is not in handcuffs like a criminal. My place is behind this sacred bench where true American justice sits." Today, Mason Vance serves his long sentence in a Texas high-security prison. Reynolds and Carter are serving 8 years each. The Caldwell Police Department has implemented every reform Alara ordered, and Judge Alara Sterling continues her mission, ensuring justice is equal for all so that such a dark day never repeats on American soil.